You will run out of money at some point. No matter if you are a small real estate investor or a big real estate investor with millions of euros real estate portfolio. The limiting factor for everyone will always be equity. The amount of money the bank wants to see on your account, so they're willing to give you a mortgage. Lucky you, there are ways to take out your equity from previous real estate investments, so you can invest the same money again. And with this little trick called rolling equity or cash out refinancing, you solve the biggest problem of all real estate investors. So let me show you how cash out refinancing works and how it does not work, even though a lot of people think that's how it works. All in this PerFinEx real estate video. The most asked question from you guys in meetings when we talk about real estate is, and rightfully so, what's the return on investment? The answer is unfortunately not as easy as the question, because there can be a couple of different answers. Return on equity is the most important and the most correct, especially in this video today, because we want to roll over your equity and use it multiple times. Let's pick one of our properties from perfinex.de/properties that you guys can buy to show you the different returns of real estate. The 3-room flat in Augsburg costs 295,000 euros plus 15,000 for the parking place, so 310,000 euros in total. On top of that come 5.5% closing costs for the notary and taxes, the lowest possible in Germany, because the property is here in Bavaria and we don't charge the real estate agent fee. 15,620 euro is not exactly 5.5% of the 310,000 euros purchasing price. That would be 17,050 euros. What? Is PerFinEx faking their numbers? I knew it all along. No, we don't. We just practice what we preach and use 2 of the 7 real estate tax tricks that we talked about in a video before. Here we separate the furniture from the property and we do some small repairs which are immediately tax deductible for you guys or whoever buys this property. And that's why the return is so good. You'll see in a moment. And since you pay closing costs on the property, but not on furniture or on repairs, you save almost 1,500 euros. In scenario 1, you pay these 15k closing costs only and finance 100% with the bank. Will that give you the best interest rate possible? No, certainly not, but it will give you the highest return, by far. Let me show you. The first answer to the question, what's the return, is the return on rent, which you can calculate super easily by dividing the annual rent by the purchasing price of the property. This property gives you an incredibly good return on rent of 4.6% before costs and 4.0% after costs. Most costs can be paid by the tenant, of course, but there are still some things that you need to pay for as the landlord. And this alone is what eliminates all these ImmoScout properties that you guys send over, because they have most of the time 2%, maximum 3% return on rent. And you know what we could do if we would be greedy, right? Double the price of the property and put it on ImmoScout. Because if you double the price of a 4% return on rent property, it becomes a 2% return on rent property. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, how people get screwed over by paying hundreds of thousands of euros too much for properties. What seems to be more important than return is cash flow for some of you guys, which I can kind of understand, but not really, to be honest. Because it's just like choosing an ETF that pays 7% dividends with an increase in value of 4% over an ETF that pays only 2% dividends with an increase in value of 38%. The first ETF gives you a better cash flow, right? But which one was the better investment? The second, of course. And the cash flow here in scenario 1, if you finance 100% with the bank, is 330 euros a month negative. And here you can see kind of the rule of thumb that I mentioned in lots of videos already. For 100 euro monthly cash flow, you can get a 100,000 euro mortgage from the bank. 310,000 euros for 330 euros a month. Point proven. And that is the pre-tax cash flow only, which, to be honest, who gives a The real power from real estate as an investment comes from all the nice tax benefits that you get. And because of these nice tax benefits, your after-tax cash flow is almost 200 euros a month positive. So yes, you will be 330 euros a month negative if you finance 100% with the bank, but next year, when you file your taxes and Finanzamt pays you, you will actually be 189 euros a month positive. Summing it all up, under the assumption that you don't have a mortgage and pay for the property out of pocket, your return on investment, second possible answer after return on rent, would be 7.6% per year. But you do have a mortgage, a 100% mortgage in this scenario. And that's why your return on equity, third possible answer, is over 21%, because you invested 15,000 euros only to buy a property worth over 300,000 euros. And your return on equity after tax, in my opinion, the fourth and right answer to the question, what's the return, is 29% per year. Assuming that you hold the property for 10 years and then sell it completely tax-free. Now show me one other investment in real estate where the return after tax is higher than the return before tax, where you don't have to pay taxes on your profits, but you get tax benefits on top of your profits. And just to complement two down payment scenarios, before we talk about how you can get your 15,000 euros back to reinvest it as rolling equity, because 29% return per year is not good enough, with 10% down, your return goes down to not even 19%, more than 10% worse than with 0% down. The more you invest, the worse your return gets. What the f is happening here? That is leverage, my friends. Even though your interest rate will be better if you make a down payment, your return on equity, the real return, goes down because you invest more of your own money. And with 20% down, you have to invest 4 times as much as in scenario 1, all while your return is cut in half. Not exactly an attractive scenario, having to invest 4 times as much money for half the return, is it? If you want to buy properties as well, really good properties, like the ones that we are discussing right now, with a mortgage from a bank that allows you to roll over your equity and cash out refinance, then you can book a free meeting with us right here on perfinex.de/meeting. The clear disadvantage of real estate is that your equity investment, no matter how much it is tied up in the property investment for years and potentially decades, which you don't want, right? Because you want to use your equity to buy new properties which make you 30% return on equity again. Let's say you buy a property today for 100,000 euros, financed 100% by the bank. So you have a property on paper, but actually you have nothing, because you owe the bank the same amount the property is worth. Years go by, you increase the rent over time, you might do some renovations, like we talked about earlier with the Augsburg property, and suddenly your property rises in value by 20%. And of course, at the same time you paid off your mortgage, which is at 90,000 here in our little example. That means it's time for you to cash out refinance with your free equity, because now you don't have €0 anymore, you have 30,000 euros. And that's enough to buy 2 properties here in Bavaria worth 300,000, if you remember the 100% financing scenario from earlier on. The issue is just that these 30,000 euros are not on your bank account, are they? They are tied up in your property. And unless you sell your property, the money is not there, right? And that's where cash out refinancing comes into play, because that will make the 30,000 euros real. So you actually have it on your bank account. Important. Cash out refinancing has some advantages, but also some disadvantages. The most obvious advantage is that you free the money that you have tied up in your property or properties. Congrats! If you sit on stones that got more valuable over time, but if you can't use the money, what is it good for? Hey, my property increased in value, but I can't use the money. Cool story, bro. The obvious disadvantage is, if you increase your mortgage, what's gonna happen to your monthly payment? It goes up, which is fine usually because it shouldn't be a lot, and you hopefully increase your rent over time so you can bear if the mortgage payment goes up a little bit. Another disadvantage, maybe, it's more of a risk than a disadvantage actually. Let's say you bought a property in 2020 with a 1% mortgage rate, and now you want to cash out refinance 4 years later. What interest rate will you pay for the new mortgage? 1% as in 2020 or 4% as of today? 4% of course, because cash out refinancing is always done with the current interest rates. Can also be beneficial if interest rates are lower again in a couple of years, but it's certainly a risk if it's not a disadvantage. And not every bank is doing cash out refinancing because it is not the most common real estate financing method here in Germany. It's more of an advanced method for real estate investors because you need at least one property before you can cash out refinance. Makes sense, right? And that's why we keep telling you in our videos that you should not get a mortgage from a bank simply because it is giving you the lowest interest rate. I would happily pay 0.1% interest more if it means that I can cash out refinance in a couple of years to earn 30% on my equity again. And if the bank you have your mortgage with is not doing cash out refinancing, it can be pretty difficult to do because another bank would need to go in the second rank in the land registry behind the first bank you have your mortgage with. And banks do not like this at all. Oh? Choose your bank wisely and do not get tricked by the lowest interest rate thinking this is the best bank. And of course, the cheaper you buy, the more and the faster you can cash out refinance, which doesn't necessarily mean cheaper in absolute terms. So a 100,000 euro property is not better than a 200,000 euro property, even though it's cheaper. I'm talking about cheaper in relation to value here. So if you buy a property for 100,000, which the bank values actually at 110,000 euros, the more you buy under value, the more you can cash out refinance and the sooner you can cash out refinance. What did we learn in this video? Buying your first property is always the hardest, and then it gets easier and easier the more properties you have. There's multiple reasons why that is, and one of them is that you can cash out refinance the properties you already have, if there are good and profitable properties, of course. And if we can help you in finding properties like this that help you scale your real estate portfolio exponentially, you can visit perfinex.de/properties or you book a free meeting with us with the card that you're seeing here on screen. I thank you for watching and I'll see you next Sunday.